Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, where we talk to innovators who are rewriting the DNA of healthcare. Today, we are joined by Raajen Patel, Executive Vice President of Innovation and Client Management at Medical Informatics Corp, the company behind the Sickbay Platform for frictionless physiologic data delivery at scale. Over nearly a decade of Medical Information Corp, Raajen has grown from analytics developer to EVP, now leading a multi-team department that designs and builds clinical and research products, creates new algorithms for bedside use, and partners closely with health systems to improve patient care, quality, and research. He's a co-inventor on multiple patents, including innovation in waveform annotation and distributed machine learning for large-scale data analysis, and co-author on more than 10 scientific papers spanning rapid response, pediatric critical care, and molecular kinetics. His work has been recognized with honors such as Distinguished Texas Instruments Fellowship and a Best Pediatric Abstract Award at 13th International Conference on Rapid Response Systems and Medical Emergency Teams. Trained in applied and computational mathematics at Caltech and electric computer engineering at Rice University, Raajen describes his mission simply: he likes math and he likes people. And he leads a cross-disciplinary team that sits shoulder to shoulder with clinicians, researchers to help save lives with data. Welcome to Health Tech Heroes, Raajen.
Thank you for having me.
So let me address the first elephant in the room. So given the political situation and the reason that I picked biology, it is very hard for me to really connect. Help me connect here. You often say you like math and people. When did these two truly come together for you in a way that felt emotional and not just technical? This is because both are very complicated, math and people. And where does love come from? What does it mean to you?
That is a really good question, because when I was a kid, I loved music and I loved talking to people and I liked being around folks. And at the same time, I was good at math. And by then, arithmetic, right? Like making change at the cashier, that kind of thing at the supermarket. And these things only really coalesced as I got older and I recognized sort of the threads between them. Math and music, they can both be very elegant. They can be very beautiful. They represent something that it's like a life of the mind kind of thing, which ends up being very high level and abstract. But then there's also something about bringing that back into the body and the like pace of dancing, which I don't have. I'm just saying I can admire that kind of thing and the ways that people are able to embody that kind of high level thought to do things in the world that are interesting or funny or fun or magnificent or holy or whatever it is that's trying to get them to that sort of heightened place. And so what I realized as I went through the early parts of my career, like college into my first couple of jobs, is that like, how do I braid these threads of here's some very sort of high-minded ideals and lofty goals that I'm really into. Here's some things that'll like pay the bills, right? Here's some skill sets that'll pay the bills. How is it possible to draw these things together? And it took a while, and you can see, especially with that kind of intro of the sort of path I've taken, but I was eventually able to braid those together when I met up with our co-founders, and they talked to me a little bit about the data that Sickbay collects and how it could be used to save lives by supporting the clinicians who are taking care of these folks. And so there wasn't one particular thing that hit. It was just this sort of like stew of experiences that I reflected upon and really kind of thought through with respect to, okay, what kind of career would I want to have? What kind of values can I, live? That kind of thing. I think that it's not only really hard to do, I think it's like a moving target. And I think you can come to it and you can come away with it. And it's like a work in progress, I think, forever. And I happen to be in a really great spot right now where it's the intersection of these things. And I can fully, express that kind of idea of like, there's a beauty in mathematics, there's a beauty in people. These things are wonderful.
I think I had never connected the math to music, but I do see that thing, the beauty in that patterns, the finding those patterns and recognizing those patterns. I do see it in a way, and I do that with data in general.
Bach is the classic example of this, right? Where he sets up some rules at the beginning of his piece and then he follows those rules mathematically. But I think there's a lot of genres that do this very well, in that they're playing specifically around meter and tone and rhythm as a way to get to this sort of, I don't know. It's It's one of those things that for me anyway, because I'm, language breaks down, but it's like that feeling when you're hitting that groove, right? When the drummer's in the pocket, like that kind of thing.
Getting to the truth, I guess.
Yeah.
Ultimately, math,
Yeah.
that is what it does. Brings all the science together to get to the truth.
I guess on some level, it's like math is trying to get to a logical truth in the purest sense, whereas in music, you're trying to, on some level, get to an emotional truth.
Yeah,
And weirdly, it can be the case where if you get to a logical enough truth, it evokes an emotion. So you can tell I haven't disentangled. I can't like just.
This is the process. This is the conversation we'd love to have, right? Because you're trying to make me understand as a naive person to this field, to the field as in like the scientific field, and to your thought process. It really helps. I want to, because I think because you have put thought into it. This is not a very normal question that I would ask, but I'm going to ask you this. And it is also relevant because the human connection is a premium now, because I can, instead of talking to people, I talk to ChatGPT now. What is the beauty that you see in humans that makes you like, right? I'm asking a very fundamental question that AI will never replace. What is that thing that you see so unique about human? I know what I see, but what do you see?
Surprise and delight. Mainly. I think when people are charmed by like Gen AI and ChatGPT, things like that, it's partially because it's giving them a response that they wouldn't expect. There's that part that's like asked you when Ben Franklin was born and you gave me when he was born, and that's all well and good, and now I can move on. But it's when it starts saying just things that are not expected, and you laugh, right? Because you're surprised and you're a bit delighted at the unpredictability of the machine. And the question, I think, when it comes to hanging out with people and enjoying their company is they're also unpredictable. And then in hindsight, ideally, there's some kind of consistency behind it, right? Like I think about the series finales of TV shows where you're like, oh, that wasn't expected, but it makes sense given everything that's happened before, right? So I think people are very good at that kind of long-term sort of slow consistency, but then they do things that are surprising, that are within their character, but that you can't predict. And it's not necessarily them. Oftentimes it's the interaction between you and them, or you and them in the environment. And so it's this like emergent thing that's happened. You've hung out with friends where all of a sudden somebody says something and you can't stop laughing.
Yeah.
And right? Like, and it's not necessarily that they even 100%. Said something funny. It's just like a feeling in the moment that's bigger than everybody in the room, that everybody then acknowledges, and all of a sudden there's this like huge release of emotion, right? That kind of thing.
I think that was an excellent aspect that I had not realized. So thank you very much. For me, I like human beings because of their fallibility. It is unique. There is something so pure about it. And the second thing is majority of the people have the capacity of doing the right or the wrong, and we choose to do the right thing. I think that's beautiful.
I really like that a lot, right? The sort of the striving. Right? The like, I did this and I could do it a little better, or I did this and I did the best that I can. That the effort and the value in that effort is really important. Right. Yeah, certainly. Right. And then in the right environment, that person could do things that they didn't ever think they could do. Right. And those are the moments that we really feel like we're at our best, right? Like breaking world records, or like curing a disease, or whatever it might be. Right. Like, yeah.
So a little bit more technical. You worked on hyperspectral imagery, molecular kinetics, and oil and gas signal recovery before focusing on patient care. What was the key moment when you realized that you wanted your models and algorithms tied directly to human lives at the bedside?
Because I was coming from math, and this was coming out of my sort of grad school experience in which you're learning new math effectively, and you're trying to see where the things that where the new formulas or the new models that you're creating could be applied to different types of data sets. Hyperspectral images is one example, right? In the, molecular kinetics is another. And underlying this is, part of my education was image processing and signal processing. And so this was another kind of data set, but it was a data set that would have immediate, in my mind, like an immediate impact on a human person. Hyperspectral imagery has a lot of really cool applications, but they're fairly abstract, or they're for companies or for lots and lots of populations, things like that. This felt very human scale of like, okay, I've got this EKG, or I've got this blood pressure waveform. What does that mean for me, somebody who is sick and trying to get better and getting help to get better? And so when I learned that this kind of data set existed. And then when I learned what it could be used for, then I was like, right, like this is I've got all these tools in the box, and now I'm going to use it to build something really nice, right? That was kind of the aha moment, was when I learned that this kind of data existed, really.
That is, it was a very conscious decision that you wanted to change things up. It just didn't happen automatically. So I appreciate that. Okay.
It's easy to get into math and just get into the things that you enjoy, go in very, very deep. And it just so happened that I was going in deep on various techniques that were, for lack of a better phrase, agnostic to the type of data. And then I started thinking, well, where would I apply these techniques? What's the most interesting thing to me personally to apply to these techniques to? And healthcare, once I realized that it was an opportunity, I was like, well, this seems like a great field in which to apply these techniques.
Yeah. Can, as you started, that you can really lean into this. And because the two things you particularly love, and it addresses both of your ikigai, I guess. You found your...
And in addition to that, you mentioned the complexity of people, right? Like the data that we get from them is also complex. Like it's not as, whatever math you do is not as clean as doing it from a textbook, right? You've got signal noise or measurement noise. You've got whatever, the actual internal state of the patient is, which you're trying to infer, that kind of thing. And so it wasn't just that I could apply this technique and be done. It was like, there will always be problems to solve in this space that I can apply the techniques I've learned, and then new ones I can invent at those kinds of things. So this is something that I could keep working on for a long time and keep doing interesting things. It was, in that sense, it was a clear winner in terms of possibilities.
I think that beautifully brings us to the next question. I'm going to attribute something because I think it's a superpower. It might sound negative, but I think you might be an overthinker. Right. As a scientist, which is, I think, is a superpower, right? But with every superpower, there is also a basement. So my question to you as a successful leader, when you think about patients and the clinicians' need and research collaboration, how do you make these tough decisions of prioritizing one thing over the other thing? As you said, you can always find problems, but you cannot address all the problems. What is your thought process? What is the framework that you have that helps you prioritize these things?
The first thing that I thought of when you said this was our analytics suite, because you're exactly right. I'm not going to solve every problem. My team's not going to solve every problem, but we have built tools that put the power of these kinds of analytics in the hands of researchers and quality folks at our live sites. So Sickbay Clinical is collecting this data. It's at scale. It's recording it inside the hospital. And then the analytics platform can be used by folks at those research institutes to draw more and more insights. Every researcher and research group has their favorite problem they want to solve. And if physiologic data can help them solve that problem, we want to give them the data and the tools so that they can do that. Because we know that I'm certainly not an expert in every healthcare problem. I'm not even coming directly from a healthcare field, but I do know that we can put that power in the hands of those folks, give them the things that they need so that they can develop those insights and sort of blossom out from there. So my first inkling when I'm thinking about prioritizing is, can more clients get up on the system? Can we train more people on using it? Can they use it to do their specific thing? Arrhythmias or hemodynamics inference, things like that. Whatever it might be, right? Using physiologic data, understanding of vet management. And from that, do we have the right tools like that are complete enough so that they can go like with a quick couple of trainings that they can go and run it at their own pace as fast as they want? And then after that, are there sort of larger or more abstract things that we can do to make more broad ranging algorithms or tools that make it easier to parse this kind of data? Those are the kinds of things, like sort of the division, the prioritization. That said, some folks have really great ideas, but they don't necessarily have the resources at their facility to execute on them, right? And so we do collaborations if it's the kind of thing that folks are interested in doing with us. We're happy to work with them as clinical experts, as them being the clinical experts, as us being a bit more of the math experts to make something interesting. But ultimately, I think it's this idea that we know that this data is interesting. Every time we show researchers that this data is possible to collect, they are very interested in getting, the capability to have it. And so that's what we want to be pushing forward and making sure that they do and that they have and that they're making use of it.
I think in a way that is brilliant that you have created a platform where you don't have to solve all the problems, but you basically have your clients find their problems and help them solve their problems. You're not solving the problems for them.
One thing that I keep thinking about is like they're closest to it. And so they should have the most ability to solve it. Right? They should have the most autonomy to solve it, is maybe a way to put it, where it's like, I'm a doctor, I'm taking care of this patient. They're my patients, right? Or my team's patient. I need to do the best thing that, we need to do the absolute best thing we can. And we should be allowed to do as much as we can, right? And I think the same thing is true with research. And oftentimes these groups, intertwine and they intersect, where it's like, listen, like I care the most about ejection fraction, right? Whatever it happens to be, I care the most about retinopathy of prematurity. And it's like, good. Like your experience has led you to that place. We should be able to support you so that you can keep going in that direction. And so that's very much on our minds when we think about the, utility of Sickbay and the utility of the data that it collects.
That's fascinating. You don't say, this is my data, I'm going to sit on it. Any insight you get is through me. That's not the idea behind it. So I'm specifically repeating that just for me to really understand how beautiful this is. The other part I think is also that because you have so many partners, you can probably also say that, hey, maybe you should start looking at this because our partners found a lot of value in looking this aspect of the patient population. And I think that just elevates the whole idea about.
You're exactly right. Like, we encourage folks to publish on what they find. And I think, I don't remember the last count, but it was something like 140 posters, presentations, tracks, papers have been written using Sickbay data to support what they found.
What is this timeline for 140 approximately?
I think over the last 10 years or so, something like
14
that.
abstracts.
Yeah, which is it's reasonably respectable, especially as we're growing. But the idea is that we encourage the research institutes that we're installed in to publish, and so that they can share this knowledge. Because if it's like, hey, I discovered this new algorithm for X, it should be known, and then it should be brought back to the bedside and to see how it actually affects patient care. But the idea is to keep sharing this knowledge, because that's how the state of the art of medicine gets pushed forward, right?
For someone hearing about Medical Informatics Corp for the first time and Sickbay for the first time, how do you explain? How do you see it, Raajen? What platform does and who it's built to serve?
Yeah, so usually the way that I say it is, Sickbay collects and delivers physiologic data at scale. It's software that lives inside the hospital. But what does that mean? Let's get a bit easier. When you're in an ICU room, if you've happened to be in one or you've seen one on TV, you see the monitors on the side and the numbers go beep and the lines, the EKGs, blood pressures, things like that. What you might not know is that data is not necessarily saved. Once it leaves the screen, it's kind of gone. So, and that's true not just with the cardiac device necessarily, but also with the ventilator device, the NIRS device, other things that might be attached to the patient. And so Sickbay is software that lives inside the hospital, and it draws all of that data together from all of the beds, all of these devices, all the monitored patients. And it aggregates it so that it can do two things. It can deliver it live to clinicians. So the Sickbay Clinical Platform is an FDA-cleared Class 2 medical device for remote patient monitoring and alarm distribution. So what that means is you can take that picture on the bedside device and you can see it from anywhere. And it's near real time, which means that, if you happen to see Sickbay and the monitor at the same time, they should look the same. There should be no perceptible lag between the two. The second thing that we can do is collect that data set over time for the hospital, and so that the research and quality folks can then draw more insights out of it. These kinds of machine learning projects that rely on large amounts of data to make insights. So who Sickbay is for, it turns out to be an incredibly broad set of folks, because traditionally you had the EHR, which was collecting clinical notes, images, things like that. You had genomics, those kinds of humongous data sets. And that was sort of, the bulk of it, the bulk of available data sets. Time series or physiologic data in this way, like every single waveform coming across every single patient at this scale and at that density, generally wasn't available. What we have found is making this data available becomes a huge boon to people who've been hoping for it or waiting for it, or for a technical solution for this for a long time. Certainly clinicians use this all the time when they're doing rounds, when they're away from the bedside, when they're at home, that kind of thing. So doctors are using it to watch over their patients, especially patients that they know might be at risk of deteriorations. Nurses use it all the time. When they're charting, they'll put up our system alongside so they could watch over their patients while they're charting or in their office, or when they're buddies to lunch and they're helping watch over their buddies' patients. RTs use it, respiratory therapists use it to watch over their patients who have vents. We have folks who specialize in particular types of monitoring, ECMO, for example. Sometimes these devices are all across the hospital. They're geographically disparate. They get brought together in a single view for people to look at. Command center, folks in virtual MDs, virtual RNs looking at command centers, they use it. The pharmacists occasionally use it to look at the physiologic effects of medication aligned with the physiologic trends. I'm sort of rambling here, or like going on a bit. So I'm going to pause and say we actually have a lot of these "Who is this for?" in our Stories from the Field channel, which I highly recommend you guys out there check out if you're interested in hearing more. The clinical and quality uses are sort of legion. For researchers, the main use is the ability to access, tag, and get at the data sets that most represent their patient population of interest. Patients with hyperplastic left heart syndrome, or patients who all had hypotension, that kind of thing. Because again, it was like clinical notes, images, genomics. This time series data was just sort of missing from this multimodal understanding of what's going on. And now that they have it, they're able to immediately sort of graft it onto their data sets, to use it in lots of different ways to further their understanding of like the physical state of the patient as it changes over time as they get better.
That is incredible. So do you help in that integration with the EHR data, or the centers take that on, or do you have?
Yeah.
Is it like another additional tool for doctors, or it is integrated in the system?
Sickbay can be a standalone system because it's a web app, so it can be used apart, but it can also be embedded into the EHR because one of the things we think about a lot is 0 clicks. Folks didn't go to med school so that they could look at a computer necessarily because they wanted to take care of people. We're very we're very sensitive to this. Also sensitive to the idea that like technology shouldn't be inflicted on folks. It shouldn't be like, you're going to use this tool because we bought it for you, like congratulations, that kind of thing. It should be like, how's this going to help me out? How's this going to make my life easier? How's this going to help my patients out? How's this going to make it so I have to do less stuff? And so very much so the intention of Sickbay is to be able to collect this data and then display it wherever the clinicians are, but to also work with the facility to figure out the best ways to deliver this data to folks so that they don't have to click into like 50 different things, or you know what I mean? Like it's because that gets tricky, right?
100%.
Like how many apps do you have in your phone today? Like it's its own thing.
Well,
so
it's better than it used to be, because for each thing I used to have a different device, like the alarm clock.
That's true.
That's like as a TV or a visual device, or there was also they introduced a Twitter device. Remember at that one point?
So that's a really good point, right? Because that's kind of like going to each one of these medical devices individually, and in your brain sort of understanding what each one is saying at the same time. So that's actually very very apropos, so that we're able to draw it all together.
The phone's one of the biggest things why we spend so much time on the phone is basically we are doing a lot of things on the phone now. We are not using different devices anymore, and it is also addictive, I must admit.
No, that's good. And maybe this is where that analogy sort of falls apart a little bit with, being able to bring everything onto one device is very useful. But then even farther than that, it's getting it, sort of an intuitive. So it's like, I don't have to search for it anymore. I want to be able to just see it when I see it, that kind of thing.
Exactly, or even walk to it. So you and your team have designed products, created algorithms, support clients day to day. But can you share as an example, of course, without identifying patients or the hospital or anything, where you really saw something that like, hey, you know what? The reason why I'm asking this question is probably relevant, is that what you get into a field because you're excited about it. You want to do the right thing, but there are certain things that keep driving you, waking you up like in the 6 a.m. in the morning with a lot of energy and keep working till like 9 o'clock in the night. And what are these wins that you have had, or patient story or a hospital story that keeps you driven?
I'm fortunate enough to have a fantastic clinical engagement team who go out into the fields and they do two main things. They do a lot of stuff. And one of the things they do is they train new folks on the system. So let's say we're spinning up a new unit and that they'll have a training curriculum for the nurses, for the docs, for the, RTs, that kind of thing. And what they'll see in those rooms is folks who are seeing it for the first time. They're like, oh, I can use this for these patients, or I can use it for this thing. And before they had no solution for doing it, right? They just sort of had to deal, for lack of a better word. And so them seeing that the eyes light up and that recognition is incredibly rewarding. I've been lucky enough to be in some of those trainings and seeing that is incredibly motivated. And then hearing that team's stories it really, really helps drive me. On the other side of that, they also go back to client sites and they ask how Sickbay is being used, if folks are using all the features, if there's things that seem sticky or there are things that aren't being used. And they'll get back these kinds of stories of, well, I was watching a patient on an overnight and they started doing something that I wasn't quite sure about. And so I immediately sent that view securely to, some of my team, and we got together and we took care of that patient, right? Like we saw what was going on. We prevented something bad from happening. Most of the stories that we hear are about people being able to access this data now in a timely way to prevent calamity or catastrophe, which is wonderful, because you don't want to, and this happens and people, but you go back and you review something like, okay, what happened? How do we make sure it doesn't happen again? Did something, did we follow our procedures? Do we need to change something? But for me, it's like, I want that the level of data that we provide to be useful enough where somebody can see it and prevent something from happening. And we hear that all the time from across our clients. It's not the kind of, like, let's put it this way, like I can write some code that will make me feel like I wrote elegant code and then like did a cool thing. But it's another thing entirely to say, like, some of the code that I helped write, because it's not just me, of course, right? Like, we've got an incredible dev team, an incredible like product team, and support and implementations. But like some of the thing that I helped do, like, help save a life, right? Like, or save multiple lives, or like that kind of thing. I don't know, that I think about this just very frequently. Everyone's going to get sick. Quite a few people are going to go to the hospital. Quite a few of them are going to end up in the ICU, and you want those folks taken care of, because that's what humans do generally.
In the gnarly world, we have to take care of each other.
We have to take care of each other. And so that, I don't know, that's ultimately, like, I know that maybe that's a simple answer in the end, but like, it's a resonant one for me.
The answer was, the question was, what drives you? There is never a question of why I have to do it. It is just, I have to do it. And that's all.
Here's the tools that I've got. Like, how do I?
It. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And you got some really powerful tools.
In this case, for sure.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. So, of course, a lot of successes, and deservedly so, but I'm sure there is also challenges in adoption, I'm sure there are pushback. Humans will be humans. After all, there'll be a pushback, even though they see something beautiful, from different stakeholders. And I want to combine the next two questions together. How are we planning on, what is the challenges you face in making Sickbay almost a standard of care workflow in hospitals? Like, what are the challenges you face?
One thing we've been really lucky with, I think, is that the problem that we're solving, this problem of data, not being available anymore effectively, that is at the forefront of a lot of folks' mind now. But it wasn't necessarily at the forefront of people's minds 10, 15 years ago. They had other things that took priority, which makes sense. Recognizing the value of this data for taking care of patients is something that fortunately has become more and more on the minds of, high level execs at hospitals, everywhere. So we don't have to convince folks as much as it is somehow worth collecting as a new data stream across the hospital for lots of different uses. Luckily, that conversation is pretty well met. One of the challenges we have is we're still making our way in the space, right? Like we've got wonderful clients, we've got some big installs, but we're not an 800-pound gorilla, certainly. And so there's a lot of questions around like, okay, this is very cool. Can you do this? Like, are you're a software company with all of the potential flightiness that comes with that, particular sense of like, oh, we're a software startup, that kind of feel, right? And so we strive very hard to show that we're a move fast and fix things company, right? That we're responsive, that we can do these things, that we have done these things, that we've done these things very successfully, that we're a robust system that's been proven under significant load, those kinds of things. Luckily, thankfully now we have a lot of those kinds of stories of supporting our clients, especially at critical moments, COVID, extreme weather, that kind of thing. But then also just sort of one-off corner cases. Every facility is a little bit different, and we learn a little bit more with every facility, and we make our product a little bit better, and we support that edge case. I'm going back to the humans are complex thing, right? Humans are complex, healthcare is complex, hospitals are complex. So the more that we can show that we can meet that complexity and make things a little bit simpler, and the more that we can tell that story, I think the easier it'll be then for folks to say, yes, I've already recognized the value of the data, and I recognize that you guys can do this, and let's go, right? That kind of thing.
And I want to pin that thought a little bit, and is that you did mention those edge cases. And I think without this technology, sometimes we wouldn't even have known what happened in the future. Like we probably had a better outcome than we would have had, but we will be prepared for those edge cases. And turns out that it's not that uncommon. We are seeing it. It's just that we did not see the signal at all.
I think that's very true. And so if you want to learn, you can only learn if you've got good information, right?
Exactly.
And so if we can provide complete good information, that's step one to being able to learn and get better.
So there is so much value just in that one part of everything that you do. But again, it's, I'm a big fan of data, obviously.
I've had plenty of folks come and ask, hey, do you have this particular set from here? And if we're up at that site, the answer is yes. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, right. Like that is, I can keep going. Like my project doesn't stall out. Like we can keep making
100%. And you have access to this data too, right? It's not, I know the data is on site, but you have as a company have access to this data too, right?
So the data is owned by the facility, and it's kept at the facility. And then if there are projects that we're working on together, there's specific, agreements, things like that. But our core sort of, it's data you're measuring on your patients, right? Like it's so that, right? Like Sickbay's living inside a facility. It's collecting data for your facility, and that's like the base layer of it.
Okay. So you don't have your servers. It is the facility servers, and that's where the patient data is. Okay. That's a security decision.
Very much so, right? And one of the more interesting things about this is we are trying to deliver like a next generation technology with these kinds of, for lack of a better phrase, constraints. Like you can't necessarily just spin up as big a cluster as you want to make your thing happen. You're installing on an existing infrastructure. And so you have to make your code efficient. You have to make it very scalable, very robust, that kind of thing. It's a bit of technical pride, I would say, that we have a system that can do so much within the sort of the like, okay, what hardware do you have now? Like, how can we make, the most of what you've got, that kind of thing.
And I want to verbally appreciate that part that you're doing, because you're collecting so much data. That itself is a business in itself, but you have decided not to do that. You said like the data stays here, that it benefits the hospital, that benefits the patient, and that is the highest security thing. And we will go meet them where they are. So I think that's a wonderful, because I know that a lot of people who should not have access to data have access to data and resell it as well.
It happens. And this is part, and being able to, so installing inside the hospital security infrastructure makes a lot of things a lot easier, right? Because it's just a nice figurative wall.
I can totally see the benefits of that. Looking a few years ahead, it could be months, years seems like it used to be decades. Now we are counting down technology development in years. How do you see continuous physiologic data and bedside intelligence changing the way we deliver and measure care?
Generally speaking, I see it as that story that we hear, but much more often. I saw that something was going to happen and I took action. And so now they're just fine. And that story sounds very vague. And part of why that sounds vague is because it could be in so many things. I noticed the patient's heart rate was spiking, so I gave them particular medication. I noticed that these 3 signals were doing something correlated with particular events. And so I went and I performed this particular procedure, right? Like it's that idea of being able to act ahead of time to give your team space so that they can, so that they're not running to the next sort of emergency. The proliferation of data and signals and patients, wearables, monitoring at home, that kind of thing will do 2 things. One, I think it's going to like really, the amount of data that's going to get sent out is going to get huge, and it's going to necessitate high quality, robust algorithms to alert folks, because it'll be sort of too much for them. That sort of deluge will be too much to pay particular attention to. What I see as sort of the future of physiologic data and machine learning and algorithms is that kind of idea of like, okay, I know more about these patients because I'm inferring more stuff with this continuous data. Cool. I can then be able to watch more and more patients because I'll be alerted to something that happens. Okay. And then when I am alerted, I can act because I'm alerted with enough time and have enough people and enough resources so that I can act, prevent the thing from happening. And in doing so, save a little bit of effort so that we can take care of the next person. So that's kind of the idea.
It just makes things really, really efficient, and as a result, better patient outcomes. And I personally think we are headed in the right direction with technology, right? Ultimately, it is the patient outcome. If we predict it early, we predict it better, and we start doing it at a population level, that when this happens in this season, this is what is going to happen. We are prepared better.
One thing that I'm hoping to see is that algorithms are effective across populations, so that it's like, I want everybody to be cared for, not necessarily the folks who get to the hospital and get to the ICU, although they should absolutely be cared for. It's like the folks who we're not measuring, right? Who don't get into that sort of, right? Like it's a similar kind of idea of like, well, if I don't have the data, I can't learn from it. It's like, if we can't watch over these other folks, then we can't take care of them. We can't, right? Like if we can't, doctors and nurses can't get to them in time. So that kind of idea of like hoping that ultimately these algorithms can be applied to as many folks as possible for this kind of, experts are watching to take care of them, is kind of the idea.
Unfortunately for your business, fewer patients to monitor, right?
Yeah. I mean, fewer patients in ICUs, possibly, right? That, you know what? But then you just move up the chain a little bit. Like like there's always problems to solve. So I'd go to the step downs, or we can go to the clinics. Like it'll be okay.
I was 100% being facetious about it. That's a good thing.
I like the idea though of like the folks who go to the ICUs, or the folks who really need to be there, like that kind of idea of patient flow, right? Taking care of people at their level of acuity and preventing them from getting into a higher acuity situation. It's like, why not try for that, right? That sounds great.
So the next question is a little bit of a technical question, but a very big human component of it, right? As we get efficient and efficient and efficient, and you said like patients will be able to monitor their own health also remotely. So this is kind of breaking down that human connection. Right. So I want to understand like what excites you the most about this technology development, and what should we watch out for? Make sure that this human connection is actually not lost. That, hey, doctor, I am actually measuring every breath, so I don't have to walk into your room to see you.
I think the first problem that we have to solve is the ability for a doctor to be able to access the information that they need, because oftentimes it's split all over the place. It's hard to get to. And the more time they're spending hunting for this data or looking for it, that's less time that they can spend understanding the patient and getting that richness of the interaction of being with somebody that way. I think that there's going to be sort of this push-pull between that kind of idea of like, hey, I'm measuring every breath, I don't need this kind of expert opinion, or the other one of like, hey, I'm measuring every breath and I need an expert opinion on every breath. Or I fed every breath into the internet and it told me that I had this, right? That kind of thing. The only thing that I could think here, like the only way through, I think, is to have whoever's taking care of you, to give them the space to have that holistic view of whatever's going on with you, and to have that understanding of your trajectory and how you got here. And that's a really complicated thing. That's very complex to try to figure out. I think the only way that that's possible is if you make that information that you're drawing on that patient sort of much easier to collect, to digest, to understand, and then to deliver that understanding so that I can get to that holistic understanding faster. And I think I can't, like, I'm sort of I hope I'm not stepping on any clinician's toes here, because I don't fully, I've never taken care of patients myself. I just, knowing that we're just a small piece of this larger pie of like, okay, we're giving you this phys data. How does that help you understand the patient? I'm just going through that direction, right? Like, what else can this data do, or what else can the algorithms do to get you to that understanding faster and easier? And I'm making the assumption here that the other data that's collected, that's sort of the goal too. So I guess that's where I'm coming from with that.
Definitely. I don't think the intention is anybody is trying to. I think that's where the health tech industry is a little bit of on the background, that we are not stepping on the toes of the physicians, but physicians do not have time to develop these tools. And these are
Yes.
such major important tools. And a lot of my family are physicians, and they will appreciate more insights into their patients. They are just researchers and scientists at the core of it.
One of my favorite interactions is when we show Sickbay to a physician and they're like, this is the thing I've been asking, sort of just generally, like, out into to the eye for, because they recognize that that this is a thing that they could use right away. And so I'm always happy when it's like, you have the thing that I've been needing. That's always wonderful to hear. And it lets me know. It lets me know that we're building a useful product, right? It lets me know that we're aiming in the right direction, that we're like moving in the right direction. Because if the opposite was happening, then I would know to change. So feedback is always welcome in both directions, positive and negative, so that we can keep making something that folks are going to use to take care of their patients.
Talking about the opposite, it just occurred to me that when physicians are entering data in the EHR, it is exactly the opposite that's happening, that they know the data, they enter the data, then don't get the insights back. It's gone.
Yeah.
And I think
or it doesn't necessarily have full context, right? It's a point number, that kind of thing.
Very a snapshot of a snapshot. Yeah.
So instead, if we could provide that physiologic data baseline so that you can have that clinician to clinician conversation, the nurses and doctors and the care team saying, okay, here's exactly what happened. Like, where do we go from there? And then if we can deliver that at instantaneously, right? Like, or on demand, then that's many less hours that they have to spend. So that's,
and it's the physicians who are not entering the data. It is automatically, everything is collected on its own. Okay. This is the second to the last question for you. And I think as a leader, you have put a lot of thought into this. For people who want to build math for good or technology for good, however you want to interpret careers in health tech, right? Whether they're data scientists, clinicians, early stage founders, what key lessons or habits from your own journey would you urge them to adopt? What are those non-negotiable traits that you want to bring to healthcare, especially because you have come from non-healthcare part, where also you need some important, critical, non-negotiable traits, but what is that very unique to the healthcare that you have to bring?
When I was first thinking about joining this company, MIC, I was talking to a friend of mine and who had a bit more experience in industry, and he said healthcare is complicated, and we kept talking, and I did not really appreciate that when he said it. It's really complicated, and I'm learning new things all the time. I have so much more to learn, so much more to understand. But the thing is that I don't stop. Like, even if I'm like, oh, I met with this obstacle, or this, I don't know this, or, I'm trying to, understand what's happening. I just keep going. Even if I'm not going particularly fast, let's just don't stop. Don't lose that momentum. I would say more than anything that has pushed me through to over the years. Just don't stop. I know that sounds maybe simplistic, but the variety of things that you learn, the variety of things that maybe, you didn't know when you were first starting, it can be very easy to get discouraged. But the motivation of solving this problem is really high for me.
No, I think it is basically also kind of says that if you if you are a person who gets comfortable in an industry and wants to just sail around, this may not be it too, right? So that is the flip side of it, right? So,
Yeah.
and some people are very comfortable with like becoming an expert at some point and just going along with it, sailing with it. And healthcare, you cannot do that. There is no
Yeah, and
point where you will feel that I know everything, because the moment you turn around, everything has changed. So gotta keep
that has been my experience. Yeah.
yeah.
And that could be also where I sit in the, in the industry and in the org. But yeah, that's probably a better way of summing it up than I did.
And doctors too, even though they learn all the procedures and with extended, they have to keep adapting in this world because the world around them is changing. It's probably not
Yeah.
like that like 20 years ago or 30 years ago. You're an expert. You got to keep adapting. Anyhow,
Yeah.
that brings me to the very last question. It is basically an open-ended question, Raajen, for you.
Okay.
You have 90 seconds to share anything we missed or reiterate anything you deem very important, but it does not have to be 90 seconds. If you want to take 4 minutes, that's fine too. Essentially, the question is yours, the answer is yours, and the stage is yours.
So I come from a technical background, and the thing that I really, really appreciate is the people that I work with, both the teams at MIC and the teams at our clients, the IT, the executive teams, the clinicians, the researchers, because we're all trying to solve this hard thing, and we're all doing it together, and we're all working like at our best to do it. And there's something very profound about that. And it's very lovely. And so I don't know, maybe I guess I just want to shout out everyone I work with, on both sides of the vendor-client relationship, because this is a worthy problem to solve, and we're doing it together.
And I can definitely 100% agree with that wholeheartedly.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for being here at my podcast today, Raajen. I truly appreciated your time.
Thanks for having me.